went to Vietnam this summer to spend my holidays at my friend's house. We both study in the same university in Michigan. His family welcomed me warmly, and everything felt normal until 3 days later, something terrible happened. His younger brother, a boy I had just spoken to days earlier, committed suicide. I couldn't understand why. He had seemed so cheerful, a good-hearted person. The shock in the house was heavy, like the air had thickened. The day of the funeral was unlike anything I had ever seen. According to their tradition, the family prepared his favorite food, placed some of the things he loved during his life, and brought them to the burial ground. When the coffin was lowered into the earth, everything around felt heavy and still. They placed the offerings in front of his coffin. Then everyone was asked to close their eyes to pray for his soul. I followed, sitting quietly among the mourners. The air was humid, filled with the smoke of incense. I kept my eyes shut, listening to their whispers and the soft crackling of candles. But my mind wandered. I don't know why, but I opened my eyes for a moment. At first, there was nothing unusual. Just people with their heads bowed, eyes closed, lips moving in prayer. Then, I felt it. A hand pressed down firmly on my right shoulder. It wasn't light. It wasn't accidental. It felt deliberate, as if someone was standing right behind me. My chest went cold. Slowly, I turned my head, and that's when I saw him. It was his younger brother, the same boy who had died 3 nights earlier. His face was pale, his eyes fixed directly on mine. His lips trembled, and his hand stayed heavy on me. Too real to be imagination. For a second, I couldn't breathe. My body froze, then everything spun around me. Darkness swallowed my vision, and I blacked out completely. When I opened my eyes, I was lying on a bed inside the house. My friend was sitting beside me, worried. He asked what happened, and I told him everything. I told him I had seen his brother, that he had touched me. My friend listened without blinking, and when I finished, he leaned closer and said in a low voice, "Why did you open your eyes during the prayer? You should not have done that. It can offend the soul." His face was serious, darker than I had ever seen before. "That's why my brother came to you. He was trying to reach out, maybe to warn you, or maybe to take you with him." The way he said it made my stomach twist. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt the weight of that hand again on my shoulder. I kept hearing faint footsteps outside my door, even though everyone else was asleep. At one point, I swore I heard his voice whispering my name. I didn't dare look. The next morning, I tried to leave it behind. I thought maybe it was shock or my imagination. But as I packed to leave for Michigan, I found something in my bag that stopped me cold. A small folded paper shoved deep between my clothes. It was his younger brother's handwriting. I recognized it. 2 words, scribbled messy and hurried. "Still here." When I was young, I stayed for a while at my aunt's house near Moscow. She had always been different. My family said she suffered from some kind of mental disorder. She would often claim someone was in the room with her, or that she heard voices calling her name. More than once, she tried to take her own life, but every time the family stopped her in time. They took her to a psychiatric doctor, and he gave her heavy medication. After that, she spent most of her days in a half-sleep, wandering through the house like a shadow. I tried to ignore it, but being around her was uncomfortable. Her eyes had a distant look, like she was staring at something beyond the walls, something the rest of us couldn't see. Still, I told myself it was her illness, nothing more. Then one night, something happened that I can never forget. I was sleeping deeply in the guest room when I felt something. The mattress shifted, as if someone was standing on the bed next to me. In my drowsiness, I opened my eyes. My aunt was there. She was standing barefoot, right on the bed, towering above me. Her long hair was hanging messy around her face. Her eyes were wide open, too wide, and her lips moved quickly. She was speaking, but it wasn't any language I knew. The sounds were harsh, broken, almost guttural, like words straining out of a torn throat. It was not Russian, not anything human. Her voice grew deeper, echoing in a way that didn't match her body. At that moment, panic shot through me. I screamed, a long, loud scream that ripped out of my chest. My voice carried down the hall, and the whole house woke up in seconds. Lights flicked on, doors opened, and soon everyone was rushing into my room. My aunt didn't stop. She kept speaking that inhuman language, staring down at me with eyes that didn't blink. Her mouth stretched strangely, saliva trailing from her lips as the words came out faster, louder. It was like she wasn't even aware that anyone had entered the room. Her younger brother grabbed her arm and tried to pull her down, but she lashed out violently. I had never seen her like that before. She struck him across the face with such force that he stumbled back against the wall, his nose bleeding instantly. Her strength didn't feel natural. She wasn't herself. She felt like something else wearing her skin. Everyone tried to hold her, but she fought them off with wild strength. The sounds from her mouth grew sharper, almost like screams layered over whispers. Then, in the middle of the chaos, she stopped. Her body went still. Her eyes rolled back, showing the whites, and she collapsed to the floor like a puppet with its strings cut. For a moment, no one moved. We just stood there, frozen by the unnatural silence. Finally, someone checked her pulse. She was alive, just unconscious. They carried her back to her bed, laid her down, and sat around her until morning. But no one spoke a word about what happened. I never found out what it was. The doctors said it was her illness, but deep inside, I don't believe that anymore. That night didn't feel like madness. It felt like something else was standing in her body, using her mouth to speak. And even now, years later, sometimes when I close my eyes to sleep, I hear faint muttering in the dark. The same broken words, the same sounds she made that night. It feels like she was trying to tell me something, but I still don't know what. I'm afraid one day I'll wake up and understand every word. There's an abandoned room on the 4th floor of our college hostel. It's room 404. Not many people talk about it, but the story is known. A senior student, her name was Julie, committed suicide there after failing her 3rd-year medical exams. Her body was sent to our college mortuary for the post-mortem. Her parents then donated her body to the college for practical purposes. After her death, that room was shut tight. No one has been allowed inside since. It was a little after 8:30 p.m. and I had just finished dinner. My room is 407, just 3 doors down from Julie's room. I had to walk past 404 to get back. The corridor was quiet, almost too quiet. The lights flickered softly, casting long shadows on the peeling walls. As I passed Julie's room, I heard a voice behind me. It called my name, Nancy. My heart jumped. I stopped dead in my tracks and spun around, looking down the dark corridor. Nothing, just empty doors and dim light. Then it came again, clearer this time. Nancy. I swallowed hard and turned back toward my room, trying to shake off the chill running down my spine. That's when I saw it, a black cat sitting exactly in the middle of the corridor, right across from room 404. Its eyes caught the faint light, shining bright and unblinking. The cat didn't move, didn't even blink as I stared. The air felt colder, the silence was heavier. I didn't want to look back, didn't want to hear that voice again. But before I took another step, the cat let out a low, sharp hiss. The lights flickered violently for a moment, and I was so stunned I nearly lost my balance. I kept walking, my steps quickening to the safety of my room. Every glance backward told me the cat was still there, watching. I locked my door and sat against it, trying to steady my breath. The hallway felt miles away, but I couldn't forget those eyes or that voice calling my name. That night, I'm not sure if I slept or just stared at the ceiling, feeling the cold shadow of something waiting just outside my mind. Sometimes, when the door creaks or the lights flicker, I swear I hear a faint whisper calling Nancy, and I wonder what happens if you answer. There's an old house I bought near Arkansas from a bank auction. I'm a single mother trying to give my son and myself a fresh start. The house is worn, with peeling paint and creaky floors, but it felt affordable and quiet. At first, I thought it was perfect. But soon, there was a heaviness in the air, a strange feeling I couldn't shake, like the house was holding a secret. My son loved playing outside in the backyard. One day, he came running in, clutching something wrapped tightly in old cloth. I didn't pay much attention at first, thinking it was just a forgotten toy or something he found lying around. But that night, right before bed, he grinned and told me he had a surprise. He carefully unwrapped the cloth and pulled out a doll. It wasn't any ordinary doll. Its faded face was cracked and dirty, but what unsettled me most were the pins. They were everywhere, poking out from the doll's arms, legs, and even the chest. Rusty pins, sharp and cruel. I should have taken it away immediately, but I froze. There was something wrong with that doll, something cold and angry. I didn't know what to do. I told my son it was time to let it go. I sold the doll the next day and threw it out of our bedroom window, hoping that was the end of it. That night, I went to check on him just before I fell asleep. The hallway was dark, the house eerily silent. Then I heard it, his voice, soft and clear, coming from the corner of his room. "Nancy," he whispered. I paused, confused. That's not his name. I called him twice. No response. I opened the door slowly and stepped inside. He was standing in the corner looking into the darkness. I asked gently, "Who are you talking to?" Without turning, he said, "Harry, my new friend." I looked all around the room. There was no one there, just shadows and the faint flicker from his nightlight. But his eyes were fixed on something beyond my sight. The nights that followed grew heavier. I lay awake, hearing him whisper, laughing and talking to someone I couldn't see. When I asked, he'd smile and say, "Harry's just here." But sometimes when I listened, the whispers turned cold, urgent. One night, I overheard him say, "Don't let her leave." My heart nearly stopped. What did Harry want? Who was he? I tried to stay calm, to believe it was a phase, a kid's imagination. But I couldn't ignore the feeling that something else was in the house with us, a dark presence that crept into every corner. The doll's shadow seemed to linger in the corners, although it was long gone. Cold spots settled on the floor, where I swore I saw it move. The air would grow icy, my skin prickling with unease. Sometimes, when I closed my eyes in my room, I'd feel breath on my neck, a whisper slipping past my ear, and I'd hear Harry's voice, soft and sinister, saying just one word: "Stay." I don't know how much longer I can live with this unseen visitor, and I don't know if I want to find out what happens if I don't listen. Some friends say it's just a haunted toy, harmless. Others warn me that these things don't just play, they want to stay. But when I look at my son, laughing quietly in the hallway, talking to no one, I don't feel safe anymore. Harry's my son's new friend, and I don't know what he's planning. Last month, I went on a trip to Kerala in southern India with my boyfriend. We found an old house on Airbnb, tucked away near a tiny village. Locals whispered about its past. A family had committed mass suicide there in the 1980s, and everyone said it was a ghost house. We had booked a week, not knowing what to expect. The first night was fine, but something felt strangely cold. It was like there was another presence in the house, always watching. I tried to brush it off. The first thing happened when I was bathing. The shower was small, and the bathroom tiles felt damp under my feet. Suddenly, I felt fingers brush against my back. I whipped around. No one was there. I froze, trying to convince myself it was the water, or maybe just my nerves. But the feeling was so real, I bolted out, wrapped in a towel, heart racing. That night, as I tried to sleep, the room felt even colder. My boyfriend dozed off quickly. but I kept tossing and turning. At some point, I felt my blanket being pulled away. I opened my eyes and saw someone sitting in the far corner of the bed. Their face was in shadow, but I could tell they were watching me. My breath caught. I screamed and shook my boyfriend awake. He looked around, confused, but saw nothing. I spent the rest of the night wide awake, blanket clutched to my chest. The last night was the worst. We decided to do a campfire in the backyard, hoping to relax and burn off the unease. The night was thick, moonlight barely lighting the yard, and the fire flickered, throwing odd shapes against the walls of the house. As we sat together, the flames suddenly darkened, pulling into a single tall shape. Both of us saw it, a blurry, shifting figure inside the fire. Neither of us spoke, barely breathing. Then a harsh, deep voice exploded from the center of the flames. "Get out from here!" My boyfriend jumped up, scattering embers. We didn't wait to pack. We left everything behind and drove out, not looking back at the ghost house. Even now, I sometimes wake up at night and feel like something is watching me, waiting for the chance to warn me again. That house wasn't abandoned. I think whatever lives there is still angry that we came, and still waiting for the next visitors who ignore its warning. There's a building in Bahrain people call cursed. The stories are endless. Some say it belonged to a king, but years ago it was abandoned. Now it just stands, silent and rotting, with its windows broken and doorways choked with dust and weeds. The locals say it's haunted by jinn. Time did the rest. No one goes close, and no one asks too many questions. My uncle's house was just a block away. He grew up ignoring the warnings. He heard all the stories. After a while, you stop believing in them, or at least you pretend to. That's what he told me anyway. He said, if you act like you're not scared, nothing will ever happen. One evening, just as dusk flattened the colors and made every shadow stretch out longer, my uncle was walking down the road that runs next to the old palace. It was the usual shortcut home. The streets were quiet. Even the birds seemed to keep their distance. He'd nearly crossed the far end of the building when a voice behind him called his name. A woman's voice. He turned, startled, and saw her. A woman he'd never seen before. She stood at the edge of the ruined courtyard, almost blending with the grey of the old stone, her face half hidden by a scarf. Her eyes looked panicked. She asked for help in a voice that trembled. "My daughter," she said, her accent thick and unfamiliar. "She's stuck in the staircase. Please, you must help." My uncle hesitated, one foot already angled to walk away. But the way she said his name made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. It wasn't just that she knew it. It was the way she said it. So precise and flat, like someone reading it from a list. He forced himself to follow her across the crumbling doorway. The air inside was colder, felt wrong, and it smelled old, like rain on burnt dust. She led him to the staircase, rattling metal steps spiraling up in the half-dark. She pointed up and told him her daughter's leg was trapped in the grill of the steps. He hurried to the first floor, scanning the steps, the gaps, expecting to see a crying child. Nothing. The entire floor was empty, silent but for the wind scraping through broken glass. He yelled back, telling her he didn't see anyone. No answer. He stepped back to the stairs to look down, convinced maybe he'd missed the kid or the mother. But there was nothing. No kid, no woman, no echo of footsteps, not even the sound of her voice fading away. The entire lower floor was deserted. Suddenly, the atmosphere around him shifted. He felt watched, pressed in on by the heavy hush that comes just before a scream. That's when his gut caught up to his mind and panic finally set in. He charged down the stairs, half stumbling, slammed out the sagging doorway, and didn't stop running until he was back on the main road, legs shaking so bad that he nearly collapsed. He never found out who the woman was or why she knew his name. But after that night, he stopped taking the shortcut. He won't talk about the palace anymore, not even after a few drinks. Sometimes, if you mention the place, all he'll say is, "Don't answer if you hear someone call you there, even if they know your name." Some places remember, and some are better left alone. There's an old mansion on the edge of the countryside in Cape Town. It sits back from the road, rotting windows, overgrown grass, trees twisted and leaning over the broken fence line. Locals avoid it. If you ask, they'll just shake their heads or mutter something and walk away. But everyone knows the story. A teenage girl was murdered there years ago, supposedly by someone in the king's family. After that, things have never felt right. When I first moved to town, I didn't know any of those stories. I was new, just excited to explore somewhere different and maybe find a few hidden corners on my motorbike. One evening, after a long ride through the fields, I came around a bend near that old mansion. That's when I saw her. She couldn't have been more than 17. Dark hair, pale skin, a faded old-fashioned dress. She stood at the side of the road, arms wrapped around herself. At first, she didn't even look up at me, just stared at the gravel, almost as if she was lost. I slowed, thinking maybe she needed help. At that moment, she raised her eyes to meet mine and softly asked if I could give her a lift. Her voice was low, too quiet. Something about it felt heavy, but I couldn't leave someone alone that late, so I nodded and told her to hop on. She climbed on behind me and wrapped her arms around my waist. She hardly said a word as we rode in silence. I felt her grip loosen as we got closer to the mansion gates. Wrought iron, rusted and sagging, stone pillars crumbling in the dusk. She thanked me, almost in a whisper, and walked up the long driveway, disappearing into the shadows. The next day, I passed the same stretch of road. There she was again. Same spot, same dress, same sad eyes. She asked for a lift once more. Again, I dropped her off at those ruined gates. This happened a few more days. I felt a knot in my stomach each time, but I kept telling myself it was nothing out of the ordinary. It wasn't until I brought her up over dinner that things changed. My uncle, who was listening, suddenly froze mid-bite and asked me to describe her in detail. When I finished, he just stared at me for a long time, his face pale. He told me the girl I'd been giving lifts to matched the description of someone who died at that mansion years ago. The story everyone avoided, the murder no one talked about. It didn't seem possible, but he was certain. "People say she's still out there," he whispered, always looking for a kind soul to help her get home. After that, I stopped riding near the mansion at dusk. I never saw her again, but sometimes I still dream of her, standing at the side of the road, staring down, waiting patiently for the next person who doesn't know her story. And I wonder what would have happened if I'd ever followed her past those gates, into the dark.